Hi, and welcome to the Soul and Survival podcast with Grant and Louise Bentley. We have run the Victorian College of Classical Homeopathy since 1995. We are both qualified practicing homeopaths, and Grant is also a naturopath. Together, we discovered a link between energy and facial structure based on traditional ideas from homeopathy that have roots going back 200 years. This project is called Homeopathic Facial Analysis, or HFA for short, and has been the cornerstone of clinical diagnosis and training courses since 1999. Between us, we have written and produced 7 HFA books, including Soul and Survival. Soul and Survival is the philosophy of energy influencing matter and how this energy forms individual facial structure, our unconscious drives and fears, our life patterns, and universal time cycles.
Hello and welcome to everybody out there. My name is Grant Bentley and this is the Soul and Survival podcast. And hello and welcome to my wife and co-host Louise. How are you?
I'm good, thanks, Grant, and hello to you too.
Okay, so we have been just random, well you're the questioner, we've been randomly picking topics. I have no idea what they are. Today is no different whatsoever. So what is supposedly today's topic?
Okay, well, I like to go with energy flow. I think because homeopathy is energy, Soul and Survival is about looking at energy patterns, how energy manifests in people and things and time. And we were talking this morning on the back of an interesting week. There's been some things happening in our neck of the woods this week, some political things, and it's got us sort of observing them and commenting on them. They're not particularly interesting in themselves, but you started talking this morning about emotions, and you started making some really interesting comments in light of the week that we've had. And I just realised that HFA, our way of doing homeopathy, looks at emotions differently. So I would really love you to go into that topic and explain via the clinic, via how you do a case, via how you take information for the case. I mean, that's very clinical, but even beyond the clinic, what is the positive and what is the negative role of emotions?
Oh, okay. You're right. It's not, well, to me, it's not that interesting what's been going on. And it's kind of interesting, I suppose. But, you know, politics is not, and nor has it ever really been my thing. You're probably more interested in it than I am, and good luck to you. But the reason that it brought up emotion is that there were a lot of debates.
We probably should just briefly say, for anybody who's not in our part of the world, a premier that's been running our state for nearly a decade just resigned for no apparent reason, but there's been a lot of discussion about that person's role in our state for the last decade. And so it's been quite impacting on us locally, and a lot of diverse opinions about whether that person was good for the state or not good for the state. Depends on where you sit, and we don't need to go into that. But it really raised, you raised a lot of points of view about the emotional outpouring that this event sort of triggered.
Excuse me, I'm sorry. Yeah, no, well, I will go into it a little bit because I thought the guy who's leaving was terrible.
Okay, so you've stated that.
Well, only because, I mean, during the whole COVID time, we ended up the most locked down city in the world and couldn't even go more than 5 kilometres from our house. And, you know, we had to, if you were going to, even when that sort of curfew, that martial law was lifted and we were allowed to go out, and we'd go to, say, one of the local pubs for dinner or something, you had to put on a mask to go into the restaurant or into the pub. And then you could take the mask off when you're at the table, but when you were ordering a drink or you had to put it back on again, and then you'd take it off. It was so ridiculous. It was, everything was so completely arbitrary. And the fact that the fact that, the lockdowns to this sort of severity that we had to endure. And, I was speaking to a lot of American clients while we'll just refer, 2021.
2020 as well, of course. 2 years of it, yeah.
2020 and 2021.
Yeah, it was 2 years.
Those sort of COVID years, I mean, their lockdowns were not like our lockdowns. I mean, they didn't have police in the streets. They didn't have 5K limits. I mean, they didn't have things where you couldn't see friends, you couldn't see family. I mean, the idea
funerals, weddings, all
remember
stopped,
when we were coming back home one time and we get stopped by this military roadblock asking for, this was like World War II stuff, where's your papers?
Yeah, it was crazy.
We had to prove where we lived just to be able to get back in there. It was, I said at the beginning, I'm not a political person, but at the same time, while I don't follow politics, I certainly agree with human rights. And I think what I saw, and this is going to lead into the emotions part, what I saw was a whole lot of people willing to sacrifice their freedom in order to stay safe. But it wasn't just their freedom. It had to be everybody's freedom, whether you agreed with it or not. Right? So on the one hand, people are saying, herd immunity, which is, the bedrock of
health.
of how immunity works. Some people are saying, they're being convinced on some TV stations and radio stations that was just an inconvenient truth. There's no such thing as herd immunity and all this kind of stuff. I mean, and as a result of that, everybody had to be locked down, which sort of is contrary to. Anyway, I get so flabbergasted by it.
And particularly,
it's almost surreal that we lived through it in this.
In this so-called modern age,
In this modern age, we're sitting here and we were just, we live in a nice place. So if we're going to be locked down, it's a nice place to be locked down. So in that sense, it's not too bad. But at a personal level, but that's not really what I'm talking about. What I'm talking about with this COVID time, which is how the whole emotions came around, was that it was emotionally driven logic.
Well, there wasn't really any logic, because you've got to remember that once we and many others started looking at the statistics of COVID, assuming they were even real, and it's been shown perhaps some of them were exaggerated, those statistics were just a bad flu statistics. They were not actually anywhere near as impacting on the average healthy person. And so it didn't make sense that everyone should be tarred with the same brush. As an unhealthy or elderly person, it didn't make sense at all.
No, it didn't make any sense. But what I mean by emotionally driven logic is that Andrews, as the leader, was coming up with strategies that, to rank and file like me, just a person living in the state, seemed completely arbitrary. Now, I'm making these figures up because I can't actually remember what the figures are. I haven't done any back search. I didn't even know we were talking about this. So these figures are arbitrary, but you get the idea. Right, so you can, if you've got a wedding on, you can have 10 people at the wedding, but you can only have 8 at a funeral. Or 6 months later, you can have 12 at the funeral, and maybe and then people will go, well, 10's not enough for a wedding. Okay, you can have 13. Well, where the hell does figures like this come from? But the willingness of compliance. I think COVID was really interesting. I suppose we shouldn't get into it too much because everybody has their own opinions, and it's pretty clear what mine are. I've said it outright many times. I think the world's just been swindled. I think we've been through the world's biggest drug scandal. Anyway.
So go back to emotions, because that's the core of this discussion.
Well, the emotions were driving. I think that Andrews, the Premier, he was... I think he was just a capitalist in all of this.
Opportunist,
Oh,
yeah.
I think he saw the fear, and he just got more and more strident as his opinion polls went up. Because the more we were shut down and the harsher it became,
the more he was loved.
the more he was loved. And
It was insane, not by us,
I'm sitting
but...
here scratching my head going, what on earth is going on here? I just could not get it. And
So what do you think it was?
it's just fear.
Fear.
Yeah, it's fear.
It was marketed fear.
It's fear-based politics.
Yeah.
Right? He was pretty well known for being, I don't know whether I need to watch what I'm saying or not here. I don't know what.
Keep it nice.
Yeah, that's more difficult.
Oh, well, we have to do that.
Yeah, well, what was your question?
My question was just the emotions, and I asked you and you said fear. It was driven by fear. And I guess the question is what place do emotions have in the homeopathic clinic, in the homeopathic case, in the choice of remedy, just in day-to-day life? What role do emotions have? What do you think? This is your opinion.
Well, if you're just talking about day-to-day life, I think the world is a little confused with emotions at the moment, because I think we need to understand that thinking and feeling are not the same thing, and they can't be substituted. Right? So this is what my heart tells me, but my heart can be completely wrong.
You can also say gut for that too. People go, my gut.
Yeah, well,
my
see,
heart,
I've never been a big fan of gut feel. I think gut feel by amateurs is just laziness. I think if you get somebody like yourself or myself who gets a bit of a gut feel about what this remedy is going to be, well, I think that after 33 years or whatever it's been, and you see, I don't know how many people, but I'm busy all day. So after 33 years of that, you can kind of get a gut feel. But even then, I don't trust it.
No, I wouldn't.
Right?
I would never trust it.
Even then, I will always... I have never done... okay, I know what this remedy is, and I'm going to give it. At the end of every single consultation, even 30 plus years later, I am still... People will say, well, what remedy are you going to give? And I don't know yet. And what I'll do is that I'll go and do a repetization at the end, and I'll see what comes up. And sometimes I think to myself, you know what, that doesn't surprise me. Now, there's gut feel.
Mm-hmm. But validated by process.
Validated by process. And that's what I mean. You can't substitute feeling or heart for thinking and brain. They're two different aspects. Now, emotions are really important because they're the spice of life. They tell us what we like. If you use emotions in a valuable way, they're a very good guide to what is right for you. Right? So if you're doing something in your life, and I'm not talking about taking heroin or getting drunk because that makes me feel good, because the next day you're not feeling good. Right, so therefore your emotions are leading you astray.
Sustained good, yeah.
Yeah, but if you go for a run, go out in the garden, go for a bushwalk, go for a surf, and you feel fabulous, and the next day you want to do it again because it makes you feel fabulous, and in that interim time you're still feeling good. You're not feeling drained or like you need to do it just to get energy. You're doing it because you want to do it. Like, that's the difference between a drive and a compulsion, or an addiction even. Yeah, in an addiction, you're starting to your supposed passion or whatever. Once it becomes an addiction, you're doing something to the exclusivity of everything and everybody else. And it's becoming a necessary component in your life just to keep you at a certain sane physical or emotional level. And that's not good because now you've got that dependency on it. But when you've got something that is really positive or really constructive, your emotions are giving you that vibrance of life that just thinking of things won't do. No, you can think of the answer to a whole range of problems, but it doesn't give you the buzz. The buzz is in the emotion. So to let you know that you're on track for what you like in your life and what you want to do, to help you do your 12-month, 5-year plan, whatever plan, or no plan at all, I don't know. But if you're going to do a plan, you sit down, like when we were listening to an interview that Jordan Peterson did with that guy who's
Oliver Anthony. Yeah, it was really good.
Interesting guy, hey? Really interesting guy. And so, anyway, I mean, they're talking about the need for to be able to plan out life. Not necessarily, you know, he's not talking about next Tuesday at 7:30. It's not a roadmap, but what it is, or a set of instructions. But it's a kind of a vision, where you want to go, where you'd like to be. But if you're going to do that in your life, and it's an important thing to do at various stages, because, you know, the 20-year-old you is not the same as the now 62-year-old me.
As of yesterday.
But it's just not there. And it's not the same. What gives you your jollies is different. But your jollies are they're all tied up with your emotions. It tells you whether it's a good thing, bad thing for you.
It's a great self-feedback mechanism.
Yeah, it is. And they can be kind of individualized. But in the homeopathic clinic, they don't play, I don't. It depends on, you know, now we're going to sort of completely depend on the practitioner that you're talking to, because there are a lot of practitioners, as you know, and many of the ones that we went to in seminars where the emotions are absolutely paramount. Well, to me, that's not the case, because emotions can be pretty darn generic in different situations. If someone very close to you dies, I mean, how individualized is grief?
No, exactly.
Right? I mean, if I sit down...
There's levels of intensity, but grief is grief.
Yeah. And so I'm sort of on a little bit of I'm kind of on par a little bit with Kent here, because Kent, in his opening to his repertory, he sort of puts things like even the mentals are above the emotions, and in fact he puts the emotions sort of roundabout with the generals. Really, they're important, but you know, they're not necessarily specific to you.
And yet you put the generals very high.
I do. Yeah, I put the generals really high because the generals are unarguable, whereas intellect and emotions can be argued. People will reason to themselves what they think their emotion is. Now, that doesn't mean to say that I don't use emotions, but emotions in a case become really important when they have changed since a circumstance. So if somebody was sort of coming to me, they had recently lost their job. And I say to them, okay, so how are you, not just your physical health, but how are you dealing with this? And if they turned around and they said something like, you know, I used to be a really placid person and I saw things in good light. I was basically a glass half full sort of person, and I have completely changed. I cannot get this anger out of my system. I dream of vengeance. All these things I'm never going to do, but I dream of doing them to the boss who sacked me, and I just lie awake seething. Well, now that's an important rubric.
Yeah.
Right. So that's an important. So even though I put the generals, when I say that emotions are a general, I mean it in that your intellect is more specific to you, and your will and your understanding is how Kent arranged them. And he said that they're very specific to you. But like you said, by me putting the emotions in the generals category really it doesn't mean that they're less important, because the generals are really important. And so I'll put them in there, but you've got to know how to use them. So, for example, if somebody had arthritis and I say to them, well, what makes it better and worse? And they say, well, it's worse if I lift something heavy, or I try to move quickly. Well, I think, that's not a big rubric, mate. But, it's a truth.
But it's common to arthritis.
It's a response to the pathology. So therefore, even though worse for beginning motion or worse for motion is a general and a rubric of the case, it's not one that I'm going to rank that highly. If I get desperate,
yeah, I was going to say I've definitely used them when there's nothing else.
Well, but that's the thing, isn't it? You want to sort of keep your repertorizations down to around about. Well, I usually do anywhere between 2 to 6, I suppose.
Too slow. I teach 4 to 8. But,
Okay.
That's starting. And then when you get to a point where you perhaps need a remedy that is not quite coming through, the advice is pull back to 3 or 4 or even 2 to 3 to try and pull in something smaller.
Yeah, when I say that anywhere between 2 and 6, I'm not starting with 2. I'm like you. I'd be starting round about that 6 mark.
Yeah.
And then, if we're a couple of remedies in and I'm not getting anywhere at all, then I'm starting to have a hunch that it might not be a polycrest that's going to do this. And so if I keep on putting in 6 to 8, I'm only going to get polycrest.
And you're going to get the same ones, of course.
So it's by desperation that I need to drop.
But it's an interesting process, because but say you're only looking at 2 or 3, you've got to find the 2 or 3 that are really kind of...
Yeah, they've got to be really central.
Central and
unique.
And unique at the same time, which sound like opposite things, but they can still be a craving for salt, even though it's all about arthritis, or they could still be, like it's always at 6 a.m. or something like that. But there's a uniqueness to that, but it's still quite central and generalised at the same time. So it's quite hard to teach. I mean, I've been teaching this a lot.
If there's a concomitant there, that becomes important. That if the arthritis or the pain of whatever condition that you have reaches a pitch where now you're even starting to get nauseous or something, well, now the nausea with pain becomes an important rubric.
Yeah.
Right? But it doesn't happen that often, but in their case, but it does happen, and it can be at least, it's an individualized thing. So. Yes, I'm not saying, I guess back to the question, I'm not saying that emotions aren't important, although they, if you're using them as instead of thinking, then I think that they can be really destructive without you knowing it. And a good case in point is watching these 2 different news services that we saw one time. Now I've got to be open here. I don't actually watch the news very much. In fact, at all. So I don't know whether I'm uninformed or whatever. I was at Denzel Washington said you can read the papers, and you can either be, if you don't read the papers, you're uninformed, and if you do, you're misinformed, or something like that. Something like that, But so I don't know whether it's been detrimental to me or not, but I just don't like it. And then we've got 2 news services, because we live in a regional area, that are available to us. And one is, I guess, the thing that I notice is one is really emotionally driven, but it's emotionally driven by fear and nurture.
Yeah.
Be really nice and embrace everything and everyone, and we should be okay. We can love ourselves through this.
Yep.
Whereas the other one is the counterpoint to that, almost trying to show the idiocy of the first one and how to become enraged by their lunacy. But the bottom line is that they are both trying to fuel an emotion because emotions are addictive, right? You thought processes are not really addictive, but emotions are addictive. Your whole body responds to them. It uses it as fuel. And if you become addicted to a certain type of fuel, it's almost as if no other type of fuel will do. You've really got to break that habit.
We do adapt, don't we? It's extraordinary stuff.
Absolutely you do. Absolutely you do. And we both know, an older couple around us that sit down and they just have the news on constantly and they say nothing positive about the world.
And yet they're watching the loved up nurturing one, which is kind of weird.
It's still everything. Yeah. The nature of the news is we scour the planet for anything that's wrong.
Yeah, in any way you want to put it. And what has been interesting is something that you kind of taught me to do, because you really got me onto more thinking, because you're really big on thinking, which is great. And I think that's where HFA has really come from, your brain and your ability to step outside of the emotion and to look at things from 2 points of view. And that's what's interesting with the 2 news services too, is you can look at the same story from 2 points of view. And I don't think we know anybody outside us who does that. I think everybody picks one or the other or none. But to actually look at both from a thinking point of view, it's really interesting to watch emotions at play and to recognise the how they really capture people, and yet they're not real at the same time. But they're odd, aren't they?
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know how many news services people watch. Although I'm now not part of that group that you're mentioning,
you've decided,
because
why
I've
bother?
just decided, no, enough is enough. This is ridiculous. What do I want to be? Petrified or infuriated? I can't be bothered being either, to be quite frank. I prefer just to get on with it. Just we all have a little bit of a mission in life, I think, and that mission. And when I say a mission in life, one of the oops, sorry about that. One of the things is that it doesn't have to be grand. It's not about. It's not world changing. It's not about fame. It's just maybe, your mission is to nurture a family, or your mission is to be a homeopathic practitioner. It doesn't, it's nothing massive, but there are always these things. And, I'd much prefer, I think, to contribute in the way that I think I can contribute in a positive way, whether it's in the clinic or, maybe just doing something like this and somebody hears a little tidbit that they think is interesting or will help them out or whatever it might be, even if it's just a different way of looking at things. I just sort of think, well, look, that's about the best that I can do. If you don't, make sure you don't rip anybody off, and make sure that you're good at what you do, and that's my station in life, I suppose. Maybe not grand, but it is what it is.
And I know that you bring that into the clinic, which is interesting, because you bring it into the clinic to have that connection and discussion with the patient, to remind them of who they are, because part of the clinical process is it's quite negative. I've had this said by the students about the performer. We have quite a detailed performer, goes on for 4 or 5 pages, and so once all the questions are answered, you can end up with 12 to 20 pages of information. And it can be quite negative, and we've got on there, what are your passions? And that's really only put on there so people can break that sense of, oh my goodness, I've got so much wrong with me, or this is so negative, writing all this down. And you do that in the clinic too, and that's almost a positive emotion where you like to talk to people and remind them of their individuality by asking them, what do they really love to do? It's got nothing to do with the remedy you've chosen for them or might choose for them, but it's a way of just reminding them that you're more than the sum of these negative parts that have brought you into the clinic.
But we have to focus on the negative part because that's the part that needs fixing.
Yeah,
I mean, the
exactly.
fact that you're a great guitarist, or the fact that you're a really good friend, or the fact that you've got a fantastic memory. I mean, you don't come into the clinic saying, listen, my aerobic capacity is fantastic and I'm really good looking and my memory is just photographic. You've got to help me out.
Exactly.
Right? So
Who is that person?
Oh, I don't know.
I would like to meet
It's
them.
not the person you're looking at. I'll tell you that. But so we have to focus on the things that need addressing. And I guess I do highlight that a little bit with people because particularly with mums when they're talking about their children, they can feel as if, they're almost being a bit, they're betraying their child a little bit because, they then want you to know, but, they're overall, they're a good, sensitive kid and they're fine. And I get all that. But that's not why we're here. We're here because of the rages, or we're here because of the, the seizures or whatever it might be.
Hitting their brother every time they walk into the room or whatever. Yeah.
Okay. So what I might do is... let's carry on because it's an interesting topic. Let's carry on with a part 2 of this. I think.
Sure.
Okay.
Sounds good.
All right. Thanks everybody for listening, and we'll catch up next time.
Thanks for listening to Soul and Survival. If you are interested in more information, books, courses, consultations, learning more about facial analysis or life themes, please visit our college site, Victorian College of Classical Homeopathy, vcch.org.